So how much pop you have is something that a lot of us think is set in stone, that you've either got a lot of pop or you don't, and there's pretty much nothing you can do about it. Well, I'm here to tell you that this is not true. We've been lied to. And I don't know if this was some kind of conspiracy started by the Brazilians to stop the rest of us ever exploring different ways of increasing our pop and getting it more like theirs. But in this video, I'm going to be showing you different techniques and exercises that are guaranteed to increase your pop. So let's get it. So why am I so sure that all this stuff is actually going to increase your pop? Well, not only have I used it with the skaters that I train one-on-one, but a lot of these techniques have also come from research done on how to actually improve the different physical characteristics that we need when we actually pop. Okay, so let's start off by breaking down what actually happens when we pop tricks. So I did a little poll on Instagram and I asked you if you think popping a trick is more of a one-legged jump or a two-legged jump. About 50% of you said you think it's more of a one-legged jump. And at first glance, it definitely does seem that way. But if you get up and you actually try and do a one-legged jump, it's gonna feel weird. It's gonna feel like you don't have much power, not that strong, or just something a little bit uncomfortable about it. And if you think about when we actually pop a trick and you think about how fast the board snaps off the ground, it's definitely going to be too slow to actually pop tricks. So we need a faster method, and that's where the two-legged jump comes in. So let's check this clip and compare it to this graph that I got from some research that was done where they put pressure sensors in the insoles of skaters doing ollies. So this graph shows us not only the total force created as we're actually popping a trick, but it also shows us the different forces between each foot. The dashed line is the back foot and the dotted line is the front foot, and then that black line is the combined force of the two. So we can see here at the beginning that before the skater actually goes down to pop the trick, most of the weight is on that front leg, and you can kind of see that in the video by the way that they're leaning over that front foot. Then when they actually go down to pop the trick, as you're going down, you become a little bit weightless. So that's why we see that drop in force. However, as soon as we catch ourselves at the bottom, now we're starting to apply more force into the ground, and that's going to increase as we push against the ground to then get ourselves to pop up and do the trick. And you can see that from that bottom position up until the moment when they actually pop the trick, the weight is roughly similar between each side of the body, and only does the back foot apply more force into the ground at that very last second when we actually snap the board into the ground and pop it into the ground. The key here though is really that back foot is only snapping into the ground after that point where we've really started to jump up. So when we're already starting to go into the air and we're not really applying much force to the board anymore. If you're trying to apply force and pop the trick as you're still essentially jumping up and keeping the board down, you're going to pop way too slow and you're not going to be able to get that nice fast pop that actually sends you high into the air. So it's going to look something like, whereas if I time it better and pop at the very end, you can see that I'm able to really snap that tail much faster into the ground. So by delaying that pop, we're able to really snap down much faster and essentially like bounce the board off the ground. Like that's really what the pop is. It's just you bouncing it off like that. So as old mate Uncle Newton told us, if we apply a force into something, that thing is going to apply the same force right back at us. So simplifying things, this tells us that the more force we push into the ground, the more force the ground's going to push into us, sending us higher into the air. But the breakdown doesn't end here, because there's something else that actually contributes even more to pop than just jumping as high as we can. Okay, so I also asked on Instagram whether or not you think that the majority of the pop comes from how high you jump or how high you lift your knees. And most of you did say that you think that the pop primarily comes from lifting the knees, which is correct. I just think it's so interesting that someone can pop insanely high, but they don't necessarily have to jump insanely high as well. A lot of it is just coming from that knee getting up there. Whereas if we compare that to this clip right here of LeBron James jumping, he just straight jumped insanely high. You can really see that they're two completely different jumps there. So you can see in this graph as well that track the movement of different body parts that more than double the pop height actually comes from lifting the knees. And because of this, the science bods from these different bits of research have come to the conclusion that skaters have developed this extra efficient way to move their center of mass over different obstacles in a way that uses the least energy as possible. So this doesn't just confirm the stuff that we've been talking about with the pop now, but it also confirms the cliche that skaters are lazy pieces of shit, and this also applies to how we pop our tricks as well. So taking all of this information, it tells us that to increase our pop, we need to work on our hip strength and mobility, and also how much force we can actually send into the ground. Now this is alongside skating. Obviously to increase your pop you actually have to skate, and we'll get to that after these exercises. So these exercises are going to be focused on those two areas that I've just mentioned. I'm going to be giving you a bunch of different options that you can take and then plug them into your own training program. If you don't have a training program or you don't really know how to actually progress these kinds of exercises, then I'll put a link for the 12-week MBD skate performance program below, which doesn't just include exercises focused on pop, but also other ones focused on things like injury reduction and just getting your body better prepared for the stresses of skating. So starting off, we need good movement quality that comes from mobility, stability, and enough strength to actually pop our tricks. So we need enough mobility at pretty much all parts of our body, the ankle, the knee, the hips, not only just to be able to go down into the squat to pop the trick, but then as well that hip mobility to actually get those knees up. Now a piece that maybe isn't so obvious is that you need stability throughout your whole body to pop your tricks and to increase your pop. If you imagine that for some weird reason you're standing in a canoe and you're trying to jump out of it, because of that instability of the canoe, as you push into it to jump, the canoe's gonna move, your jump's gonna look like shit, it's gonna feel like shit, and you're not gonna get too high. It's the same as if you're trying to jump on flat, but you don't have that foot stability or hip or core stability to actually effectively send the force into the ground and then receive it to actually jump into the air. If you don't have that stability in your body, it's going to affect how much force you can actually create and therefore how high you can actually pop. Now this is a topic for another day, but just have a little think about how loose versus tight trucks might actually affect your pop. Now we can't have that mobility or stability if we don't have strength. Those things are completely combined. So we need to focus on exercises that help us build muscle and strength around those key joints that we actually use when we skate. So the ankle, the knees, and the hips. Now don't think that that means you have to become like Brandon Beeble or myself and put on just a ridiculous amount of muscle. That's not only because having an insane amount of muscle just isn't necessary for skating, but also a lot of the strength changes that you're going to get from these different exercises comes more from neurological changes, aka your brain getting better at communicating with the muscles, activating a greater percentage of them, and contracting or relaxing the right muscles at the right time. Now the movements that you do when you pop tricks are fast, so we need to be able to express that strength quickly, and there are different exercises that you can do to increase how much force you can create in the same amount of time. Now a big piece of that is how elastic we are. So if you imagine as you're going down to pop a trick, at this bottom position, my muscles have contracted to kind of anchor me in place, and as they're anchoring me in place, there are these elastic structures that are stretching around the joint, and then as we then bounce back, snap back and contribute to us shooting up into the air. So jumping isn't just from your muscles contracting, but it's also from these elastic structures stretching and then snapping back. Just like an elastic band, if you pull that elastic band back and then release it, it goes flying. It's the exact same with your body, and there are a lot of different exercises that we can do to increase how elastic we are and how well we can actually handle these reactive elastic forces. And then the last piece of the equation is to make sure that we're training the muscles that flex the hip and bring those knees up high. So we need enough strength and endurance of those muscles around the hip. Okay, so if you've been following this channel for a while, you would have heard me say many times that doing exercises is great and it's a really useful part of the equation, but we've also got to do stuff on our board to increase the carryover of those exercises to skating. So that's what this part of the video is about. I'm going to go over one skate task that's essential if you want to be working on increasing your pop. And it's a real simple one. It's literally just getting out there and trying to pop as high as you possibly can. Because it actually doesn't happen too much when you're skating that you actually try legitimately to pop as high as you possibly can. Sometimes you feel like you're popping high, but you're not really like pushing it. And there's one really important method that you have to apply when you're trying this. So if you imagine your ability to create maximum power and pop as high as you possibly can isn't infinite. If you try and jump now multiple times, you'll get to the point where you're jumping lower and lower and lower because you fatigue more. So if we want to be working on that max power, we have to be fresh. So in the same way that if we're doing certain power exercises, we're going to do them at the start of the session, and we're going to do few reps and leave a lot of time between the sets just to make sure that we're maximally recovered and can really like push it and go for it as hard as we can. We're going to use that same approach with skating. So this skate task, I want you to do it at the start of the session. Go through your normal warm-up, and when you're feeling like, all right, I'm ready to pop as high as I can, that's when I want you to do this. So I know it's cringe to use words like reps and sets in skating, but it just makes it simple, so I'm gonna do it. A rep you can think of as just one attempt, and a set is a clump of reps or attempts. So we're gonna go for 3 to 4 sets of 5 reps where you're really trying to pop as high as you possibly can, and you're gonna leave a couple of minutes of rest in between each set. So the best way I think you can do this is to pick something that you're actually gonna try and jump over. That'll force you to actually pop higher. I was doing it a parallel one time where I was ollieing over the benches. So I'd pop over the bench, I'd cruise back round, which would give me a little bit of rest time as well. Then I'd pop again and basically just circle around doing that. You can also alternate between sides. So do a normal ollie and a switch ollie as well, and then rest for 2 to 3 minutes between each of those sets. And I get as well that sometimes you don't really want to rest. And if you don't want to rest, then that's fine. Just do some like chill flat. Try and take it relatively easy between the max ollie attempts, and I'm sure you'll still get some good progress if you're doing it like that and like not fully resting between each of the sets. Okay, so a couple of things I forgot to mention whilst filming this video. Number one is that this skate task of trying to pop as high as you can is more for those skaters who've already got a real solid Ollie, feel real comfortable with the Ollie. If that's not you, then I would spend more time focusing on just timing and stability as you're going down and actually popping your trick. You can still work on popping as high as you can, but just spend more time on just perfecting the Ollie for now. And I'll do a more in-depth video on that at some point in the future. And second, I forgot to mention how important the arm swing is when we're popping tricks. Like if you watch any pro, you'll see that they swing their arms at the exact perfect time when they're actually jumping up into the air. And if you compare that to beginners, you'll see a lot of the times they actually just don't move their arms and they do this weird jump. But that arm swing really contributes to you just moving fluidly and actually getting higher into the air. Off the top of my head, I think the arm swing contributes like 10% to your jump height or something like that. So if you watch your clips back and you notice that you don't really swing your arms much, then I would definitely spend some time to work on that. So if you take this skate task where you're really getting out there and trying to pop as high as you possibly can and combine it with those exercises and do these things for a decent amount of time, don't expect like one day to give you some results. Commit to this shit for like 8 to 12 weeks and you'll see some serious improvements in your pop, absolutely guaranteed. And if you want to check out that NBD Skate Performance Program, I'll put a link down in the description below too. Also, give me some comments on this video. Let me know what you thought. Did you like it? Did you not? Give me some feedback down in the comment section below. I really appreciate reading all your comments. And that's it for this one. Until next time, peace.